Okay, well, COVID can rule out Celtics games. Not that that has happened yet. Don't worry, at least as we talk right now. But it can. It has that ability. What it cannot wipe out is Celtics Beat the Show. The weekly program continues to come your way. I am Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti watching from afar, and of course producing, and we always appreciate his contributions to the program. Today joining us, and if you are watching, you can see him already. I'll deck in the halls at his own house there. It's Sean Deveney, our good pal. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, Adam. How are you?
I'm healthy, and I hope you're healthy, and I hope everyone out there who's listening is healthy, and your loved ones are healthy, especially with the holiday season right around the corner. We cannot implore you enough. Be careful, be safe, be conscious. Don't have Christmas wiped out on account of going out and doing something stupid or something like that. But
Yeah.
As far as my basketball viewing side of me, I'm not great, Sean. I'm not terrific.
Yeah, that's been a theme going around the league. You have to wonder how long the NBA can keep stringing this out before there's got to be a pause of some kind. Obviously, there were relaxed rules coming into the year. I think there's some regret on that on the part of the league, and you've heard some players talk about it. Joel Embiid talked about it the other day. That they did relax some of the precautions that they had in place last year, and they seem to be paying a price for it here. So hard to say if you can put that cat back in the bag, but you do have to wonder if at some point the league doesn't say we're going to have to take 2 weeks or something like that. It's desperately what Adam Silver wants to avoid, what the league wants to avoid, but the way things are going, it's hard to see how that doesn't happen. It's hard to see how this all just solves itself.
Well, we're seeing more and more NHL games get postponed. That's been happening in the last week or so. A Bruins game earlier this morning for this game in Montreal, of which they were already in Canada. They've started to alter the regulations. They've started to, just in the last couple of days, they're playing games without fans again. At least in Montreal, that was the case. That's where the Bruins were to be next. They've now canceled that game, or at least postponed it. So I don't know if we're heading in that direction in the NBA. It's obviously Adam Silver, like you said, has really tried to avoid that for a multitude of reasons, and financial reasons are always going to influence things. But for anyone that doesn't know, if you haven't been on Twitter today and you're just catching news with this podcast, earlier this morning, Al Horford, Grant Williams, Jabari Parker, all ruled out of the foreseeable future anyway, because they're in health and safety protocols. They're not going to play in tonight's game against the Warriors at the Garden, assuming that takes place. The C's have a very sort of jam-packed schedule right before the holiday here, Sean. They've got 4 games between today's Friday and Wednesday, all at the Garden. So a little 4-game homestand here. You're not going to have those guys for the better part of it, if not the entire thing. You have games today and tomorrow. They're hosting the Knicks. I guess the bigger picture, and you hit on this a little bit, but I just, should we be doing this? I mean, is it despite all of the reasons to not do it, obviously, from Silver's perspective, is it in the best interest of the league to just say, all right, we got to take 2 weeks and just sort of, reset a little bit? And if we lose a few games, we lose a few games.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for us to say if we lose a few games, but there's a lot at stake on the financial end for the league and for Adam Silver. I think they knew coming into the season that this was going to be had the potential to be an awkward year, much like last year was. I don't think they thought it was going to be to the level that it's been, though, and as quickly as it's been. With a team like the Celtics, you get 3 players going into the protocols. From what we've seen, usually doesn't stop at 3. You look at a team like Chicago that had a couple. It was Kobe White, it was Javonte Green, and then next thing you know, it's 10 players. So that's something that if you're the Celtics, you've got to cross your fingers and hope that doesn't happen. But that's sort of been typical. Brooklyn went through the same thing. So you have to wonder if at some point the league is going to look at this and say, is this fair? Is this fair to the teams that are going through this? They couldn't have accounted for it. They've got to play with these skeleton rosters. Chicago's done it. Miami's done it. We've seen Brooklyn done it, and Kevin Durant's been fantastic with it. But it's not really what the league wants to see in terms of competition. Having said that, I think that the league is going to try everything it can to avoid putting off whole parts of the season. If it has to postpone a game or two, then that's what they're going to do. They don't want to change. They don't want to alter the structure of the season to where it affects next season, the season after that, the season after that. That's been the one thing that they've really tried to avoid. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do it, but they're going to do everything they can before they do anything that's going to affect the long term in terms of this season and beyond that.
I wonder if, and this may not be the most, I don't know, compassionate or sensitive way to look at things, obviously, but obviously the NBA, like any other sport, it's a business first and foremost. They're not out there for the goal of being compassionate to one's wants, needs, the overall maybe global effect, if it's not at an alarming point. And what I mean by that is you have all these guys. I don't even know what the number is, probably, dozens, if not into the hundreds at this point since the start of the year, of guys in the NBA who have been, had to miss time on account of health and safety protocols. Now, the majority of these players are vaccinated. Okay. And we certainly know, from just a general day-to-day, whoever you are, whatever you do, maybe you out there listening have been, affected by this on a personal level as well. You can certainly get COVID when you're vaccinated, but the majority of these players, if not all of them, quite frankly, like I haven't heard, maybe you have, I haven't heard a story of somebody in the NBA since getting vaccinated. So this year specifically, of a player, missing time in health and safety protocols and getting really sick in the process. It's been, headaches or common cold, or just, it's been, hey, you tested positive, you got to sit out. Those are the rules. I almost, what I'm driving at is I almost wonder if the league looks at it and says, you know what, nobody's getting sick. They're testing positive, they have to miss time. Those are the rules. That stinks. That's life. That's what everybody's dealing with in any walk of life, no matter what it is. But no one's getting sick. And as long as nobody's getting sick, play with your bench, man. Call up guys from the G League. Figure it out. These games, the show must go on.
Right. I'd like you to put that question to Adam Silver and see what he says, because I can tell you what he thinks is probably not what he's going to say. I mean, the actions show that what you're saying is exactly how the league is thinking. Is, look, you got eight healthy bodies. Let's just grind through this. Maybe it's not fair. There'll be people on Twitter complaining. So be it. Let's just get through this. By the spring, there'll be, everybody will have boosters, and there'll be less indoor stuff. It seems to be something that gets worse in the winter. In the spring, it'll be better. Go on and on. And there's any number of reasons. So yeah, I absolutely do think that that's part of the calculation on the league, that if we can just get to, we're given these exemptions out so you can sign 10-day contracts, which in a normal year you can't do until January 10th. But here with this, there's special exemptions you can get. We've seen a number of, that's how Isaiah Thomas has got signed. So, that's something that the league is saying, just get enough healthy bodies in there. Let's get through this, but let's not affect the overall structure of the season, the overall structure, and have it be something that bleeds into the structure of next season. So that is definitely the mindset of the league right now. And they're just going to try to grind through it. You've had, it's about 70 players, I think now with the two more, it's over 70 players, which might not sound like a ton, but remember there's only 420 players in the NBA, so you're talking about a sixth of the league now has missed time with COVID. And you have had some players who have said that they're pretty sick. Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid both talked about that they were laid pretty low by this. So it's not, it hasn't been life threatening for anybody, and everybody's bounced back. So that's, and if by sick you mean they're not like a hospital on a ventilator, sure, that's been the case. But this is, it's the NBA is walking a fine line here, because some guys have said that they've been really, really sick. But the league really doesn't show any signs yet of backing off this idea that, hey, look, if you've got 80 healthy bodies, we'll help you sign some players. You bring it up from the G League. Just get through the game.
Because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are listening and saying, oh God, Kaufman, enough with the COVID. Like we know it's out there, it's in the world. We don't want to talk about it. We come here to hear about basketball. Let's get Sean's thoughts on basketball. So let's talk about basketball with this team. Sean, I mean, they're 14-14, and they're the definition of middling right now. You have been on this show a number of times over the years. A lot of the same themes that we have discussed in the past continue to exist. A lot of the same, obviously, leadership and players as well. Although Danny Ainge has a new home. We'll get to that a little bit later on. But even this week, a few days ago, you got more and more anonymous GMs, executives, and front offices asking the question that we've been asking, that others have been asking for months, for years. Can Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown coexist? We've seen flashes of what this team can be when it's healthy. Seems like over the last couple of years, it's never healthy. So it's hard to get a real good sample size in that. But, they are the figureheads. They are the pillars. They are the guys at the top of the food chain now. It is their team. And there are certainly similar, not the same, but similar skill sets there, similar types of players. Can they coexist? And the whole Marcus Smart being part of the core as well, and getting his payday in the offseason? Or does a move need to be made? Do you need to take steps back in order to take a leap forward?
I think they can coexist. I think with today's NBA, with the way that defense is played, especially the way that the Celtics are trying to play defense now with the amount of switching, that these are two guys who you can have together and you can build around. I think the problem is that you need the right guy at point guard. You kind of need a healthy Kemba Walker. I mean, that's what you need. And you
but
go
Kemba Walker wasn't the guy. Kemba Walker he's got the ball in his hands too much.
When Kemba Walker was healthy, that's when they were at their best. I mean, that's when they were going to these finals. That's when they were playing well. They need a guy who can break down a defense and get into the paint. That's what I mean by Kemba. Okay. There's other things he did shoot too much. There were times where he should have been getting other players involved. But what they are lacking, what they need, what those two guys need especially, is somebody who can do that initial scrambling of the defense. And really the times that they probably played best, the Celtics as a whole has been, when Dennis Schroeder is in there, because he is somebody who is not great at that. He's not an excellent, he's not a top tier point guard, but he can get into the teeth of the defense and force that first switch, force that movement. And then once you get that going, that's when I think those two guys, Brown and Tatum especially, can be more effective. They don't have that point guard on the roster right now. I think that's the real problem here. I think those two guys can be fine together. I really do. I think to have them though, you're going to have somebody who can initiate that drive into the paint. We just don't have that on this team right now.
Do you have a guy in mind around the league who's realistically attainable, be it during this season or in the off season?
I'm so glad you asked. I do. Well, I mean, realistic is one thing. In my head, sure, why not? De'Aaron Fox would be the ideal guy. And Sacramento, whether they blow it up remains to be seen. They probably should, and that includes De'Aaron Fox. And the Celtics would have to basically mortgage the future. They'd have to basically give up 3 first-round draft picks and do the draft pick swap thing that we're all familiar with, because that's what the Nets did in 2013. But I'd like that much more for a 24-year-old point guard who can play, who can grow with Tatum and Brown, right in their age range. So
versus like a Damian Lillard, for instance.
Yeah, exactly right. Rather than somebody who's 31, 32. So he would be my idea. And given what's going on in Sacramento, you'd have to hope. I think with the ownership there, it's hard to say what they're going to do. They're probably not going to do the logical thing. They haven't at all in the last 6-7 years. But that would be the logical thing for them to start looking to tear things down and rebuild. And if that happens, I think De'Aaron Fox could be had. Whether the Celtics could put together the best package, probably not based on players, but if they are willing to include, the full slate of picks, then that would probably change.
I've seen a number of people out there, and it's a growing list where, it was always like there's the Marcus Smart defenders, right? I mean, find me a more polarizing athlete in Boston right now. I'm not sure you can. At once upon a time was Al Horford or Tuukka Rask or somebody like that. Right now, it is very clearly to me Marcus Smart. And so, you've had the Marcus Smart defenders, and you've obviously got the camp that has never liked him and doesn't do any, go for any of the beyond the box score stuff and hashtag winning plays and love him and trust him and all that good stuff that we who love Marcus Smart, that in this house we do not slander Marcus Smart, all that stuff, that those of us who just swear by the guy and pray at the doorstep that is Marcus Smart, we certainly don't want him gone. But even those people, some of them have gravitated not to the other side, but to the look. If you got to shake something up, the guy who you move is Marcus Smart. It's a movable contract. It's, now it's a contract that's got a little weight, a little meat behind it. You can get a little more for it, obviously, than before when he was making $6 million or whatever he was making. Are you in the camp that Brad Stevens should be exploring moving Marcus Smart just to create a change around here?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that happens really around the league where, everybody's either on a max contract or a mid-level or below. That's you get the guys who are on the $14-15 million deals, which are rarer and rarer going forward. And that's where you can kind of package some things and try to make it happen. Smart is a guy who does have value around the league. I think one of the problems the Celtics have had is they've asked him to do some things that he's not really qualified to do. I don't think he's a starting point guard. I think he's a guy who, fantastic six man, bulldog off the bench type. But they're asking him to do things that I don't think he's qualified to do. Another team might see it differently, and that's where you can try to get something done. So you package him at I think it's $14 million this year. Richardson at $11 million. He's got just the 1 year next year, so that's a pretty movable contract. You've got Hernan Gomez at $7 million. Now you're up to $32 million. So if you want to get somebody like a De'Aaron Fox or Brad Beal, I don't think they'll go that direction. But if that were, now you're in the ballpark where you can start talking about those players if you package the first round picks with them. But it's not, it's not going to be easy. But I do think that Smart, because his contract is manageable, because he does have value around the league, that's something where you can get something done. Just putting together a package of Jason Richardson and Al Horford is not going to get you very much.
I'm framing this, I guess, in kind of an insulting way, and it's not intended to be, because he's a brilliant basketball mind, and I certainly am not. But Brad Stevens being new to this job as POBO, as president of basketball operations, does he know what it is that he needs, not wants, but needs specifically to take them to the next point, places that he has been as a head coach, now as an executive, to lift them out of this kind of seasons long funk and put them back where obviously everyone wants them to be? Does he have the right head for it at the moment?
I think so. He's got good people around him. Mike Zarin's still there, of course, with his level of experience. And, that's, I think that as a coach, having been in the locker room with these guys and having, knowing the pluses and minuses and what the buttons that he needs to push here, I do think that he's got certainly a different perspective than what Danny Ainge had, and maybe the right perspective, having been that coach. If you have the other guys in the front office, we're going to be able to help you out with the details of, okay, if we're dealing with this team, this is what we've got to look out for. If we're dealing with that team, then it's this. This is what they're going to, all those little details that you get to learn from dealing with other GMs, which Brad does not really have much contact, basically in his career, going back to before the Celtics, of course, he just doesn't have a whole lot of NBA experience. So that's going to be an issue, but he's got enough people around him who can help him navigate that, as long as he can keep in his head as a coach what he thinks he needs. And that's going to be the real challenge for him is identifying that, and then just focusing on it and focusing on, where can I find In my opinion, it would be a break down the defense kind of point guard. But he's got to determine what that thing is and how he can best fill it.
Again, 14-14, play-in status right now. Boston has obviously been mediocre. There have been a lot of key injuries, a lot of guys, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford among them that have missed significant time. Horford now in protocols for the second time, just this season. But I don't know. Part of me wonders, like Evan and I were talking about this just before we came on, is, does Brad Stevens get enough credit on the other side of this? For all the things that he still wants to do and needs to do, does he get enough credit? Like we've talked to you obviously about the Knicks situation in the past. And, at the time, and certainly I was one of them, people looked at it and said, yeah, you want to unload Kemba Walker for sure. And, they did so, and they brought in Horford, and Horford's been terrific. I think that deal has looked good. And there were some people that wondered, should they have gotten more than an Al Horford at the time and all that. Horford has once again, when he's available, fit in very, very well to this Boston team. But Walker in particular looked like, you can get, if you're the Knicks, you can get Kemba Walker for $8 million a year compared to what he was making before. That's an absolute steal. Well, out of the rotation, he is flamed out. He's not the guy that he once was. Evan Fournier, there were a lot of Celtics fans that weren't upset he didn't get that contract, but were disappointed that he wasn't brought back, especially with what we saw in the Olympics, the way that he began this season. He's sucked as well. So, I mean, it's, I'd love to just say like, well, that's, I don't know, fortuitous or whatever, but I think on Brad Stevens' part, he read the waters right on that.
Yeah. The Knicks have been very beneficial to Brad Stevens' reputation, that's for sure. But you're right. And the things that have gone wrong with the Celtics this year, this is sort of the strange thing is I think what we would have expected the positives to be have not been positive. So you've had Jaylen Brown with 14 games out because of injury. That's a pretty tough thing to get over. Jason Tatum's had such a struggle from the 3-point line. He has not played bad in general, by the way. I think he gets way more criticism than he deserves. He's not hitting his threes. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Those are basically, that's the difference between his numbers this year and last year. But that's a significant thing in today's game. And he's not hitting his threes. He's just our player. That's a big problem. So you've got Jaylen Brown, you've got Tatum. They've been a big part of the problem. Marcus Smart shooting 38%. That's a big problem. But the guys that Brad brought in, Richardson's doing pretty much, I think, what we would have thought. Dennis Schroeder, I think, is right about what we thought he would have been. No disappointment there. I think Al Horford, like you say, when he's played, has been a little better than expected. So the disappointment in this season hasn't been the guys that Brad brought in. It's been the guys who are already here.
Yeah, I think it's accurate. Let's before we take another break, let's wrap up this portion anyway with this. Trade deadline's not that far away. Again, this team is what it is. We've been talking about it for the last however long. Do you think, as Brad Stevens looks at this, are they a buyer or the seller at the trade deadline?
Yeah, I think they wind up being a minor seller. I think if they can get involved in something where it's a 3-team trade and maybe they take on a player and they have a long-term value in terms of a draft pick or something, they might do that if they'd be willing to pay the luxury tax. But more likely, if they can unload Hernan Gomez and get under the tax, that's something that they'd like to do. Not something that fans want to hear, I know. But you got to look at Brooklyn, Golden State, the Lakers. All those teams are paying huge luxury taxes this year. Every team that's under the tax is getting a $13 million check. And that's pretty tough if you're Wyc Grousbeck to say no to and say, no, I want to hold on to one Hernan Gomez rather than get the $13 million check.
Well, especially when you're not a contender.
If you're not a contender, right. Yeah. So if you want to be, you got to really make sure that you're going to elevate yourself at least to get to, the conference finals if you're going to make a move that's going to push you over the tax this year.
For all the discussion, Sean, about Brad Stevens, let's talk about his predecessor here, Danny Ainge. We had Ian Thompson on last week, and we spent some time on this before it became a thing, just sort of speculating Danny Ainge's future. And, we were all pretty much on the same page as far as, he's going to be it's Utah or it's Portland. It's probably Utah if he goes back to work sooner than later. He's already living there, obviously. It's, he's got strong roots there, having started at BYU, and it's where a lot of his family is, a lot of his grandkids. Like Utah, it makes all the sense in the world. And oh, by the way, the Jazz are really, really good and could use a very experienced executive to not come in and be the day-to-day GM, but oversee basketball operations and put his 2 cents in. Kind of, I don't know if you would equate this. He's been hired as CEO and alternate governor. If you would equate it to a Jerry West type role, obviously, that we've seen him bounce around the league in. That was what Ian thought would be a really good fit for Danny. I don't know. I have multiple thoughts on this, but I want yours first. What was your reaction, other than, I'm assuming, incredibly unsurprised when this announcement came down?
Yeah, my reaction was good for Danny. I mean, this is sort of the dream job that he wants. Where he's involved in basketball, he's involved in sort of the high level decision making. But he doesn't have to go on Toucher and Rich every Tuesday morning. He doesn't have to do that stuff anymore and talk about the TPE every week. So that's what he wants to do. And I think this is good. Justin Zanuck is the GM there. They've had a lot of turmoil, a lot of upheaval. I think that they really want to make sure everything is settled in that front office because it's a good roster. Quinn Snyder has shown he's a really, really good coach. So everything else is sort of in place. I think they really wanted to solidify that front office, and I think Danny's a way to do that. I think for Danny, the fact that now he is working with a team that also has Dwayne Wade there, and he gets the double bonus of not only getting a dream job, but he's really ticking off Pat Riley here because now he's working with Pat Riley's guy there in Utah. That's got to really be a cherry on top of the whole thing for him.
Danny is not a guy who. We've heard it in all those interviews that he's done over the years. He's not a guy who says things by accident. He says what he wants to say. He's very calculated. He's very, thoughtful with his responses. He's sort of an expert of giving you nothing while making you feel like he's giving you something. I've always kind of been in awe of it, listening to Danny Ainge interviews. And really have all the respect in the world for Danny. And I think he did a great job, obviously, here in Boston. But I wonder, one thing that he said that I wonder if it was on purpose. I wonder if it slipped out and then he caught himself, but I don't think it was something he didn't mean. He said, I needed a break from Boston, and then was very quick to say, I had a great 26 years there, obviously executive and being a player here as well. But I needed a break from Boston, I think speaks to, maybe this is me putting words in his mouth or thoughts in his head or however you want to term it. But like you said, the weekly interviews on the radio and with newspaper, writers and everybody else out there, and just how front facing that job is to tear this thing down and rebuild it multiple times, get into the promised land, winning a championship once, getting there another time, thought he'd get there again, with the Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford additions, and that obviously didn't pan out. Drafted well overall, has helped us set this team up for the future with Tatum and Brown, assuming they stick around, and you get the front office in good hands, all of that. But you hear even if he does block out the noise and relish, back like the I Hate Danny Ainge t-shirt when he was a player and all that stuff, relish in people being critical of him, 18 years of it, like 18 years of hearing like, fire Danny. He hasn't drafted well. This guy sucks. How do you only win one championship in 18 years? All the crap that he had to, even if he didn't take it to heart, that he just had to hear, or his family members had to hear for the better part of 2 decades. That's got to weigh on you. Like, I think it was more than I need a break. I think it truly was, I need a break from Boston.
Yeah. I think that he's done a lot to leave this franchise in good hands, as you say, and accomplished a lot on the way to change. You got to remember where this team was in 2003. I think it was when he took over. It was, was a mess. Coming out of the '90s, it was a mess. With the Rick Pitino experiment and ML Carr and those years. So yeah, he really did sort out that mess and got it back to where winning 50 games, but not winning a playoff series is considered a failure. That's pretty good. That's come a long way under his watch. So yeah, I think that if you're him and you've done all this and you get to a point where it seems like you're spinning your wheels, then yeah, it's probably time to go somewhere else. I think there's also a factor of, there is a certain closeness in Boston. It's just physically everywhere you go, you're going to run into somebody who recognizes you. If you're Danny Ainge, it's not going to happen in Utah. He's not going to have to be somewhere all the time. He can he's a very private guy. As much as he is in the public eye, he is still a very, very private guy. And I think that kind of regaining some of that privacy is something he was looking for too. That's tough to do in Boston. It just is, just the proximity of everything, and also just the intensity that fans have, with their team. So I think that was part of it too. Just wanting that privacy again.
Do you believe, and I ask this just because, articles have since been written about it. Plenty of people have speculated it over the months since he quote unquote retired, which didn't even last a year. And now he's back at it. Maybe not certainly in the same capacity, but he is back at it. Do you put any stock into the Danny was pushed out? The organization, Wick, was, they were ready for a change. They called it retirement, and this getting back to work so soon, even though he is, again, not a GM specifically, but getting back to work so soon, adds credence to that? Or do you think that it's as it's all been talked about? He needed a break. He got a break. He feels rejuvenated. He misses the game, and now he's back at it in a perfect landing spot.
Yeah, I think there's a combination there. I think that his initial response to what happened at the end of last year was to stick around and try to finish. I think he was sort of he was on the clock. I think he had it in his head, and from talking to people that he was near the end no matter what. It was going to be in June the way it happened, or if it was going to be next June. It was coming either way. I think he didn't want to necessarily go out with the year that he had last year, but I think he was ready either way. And so when the Celtics sort of, started to put this together over the spring, this is something that didn't just happen the night before they announced it. Obviously, as the Celtics were putting this together, I don't think he had a lot of objections for Danny Ainge, even if it isn't exactly the way he wanted to have it all go down.
I just hope things get better, Sean. I hope things get better on the whole. We
Celtics
fans, we need it. For everybody from a health and safety perspective, obviously, but purely from a basketball perspective, this middling, this too good to tank and not good enough to contend, especially with real talent. Like, it's not like it was Paul Pierce by himself all those years. I mean, you got two bona fide all-stars, young, entering their prime, potential all-NBA perennial guys. It just feels like at least the front-loaded part of the roster, the top half of that roster, is too good for 14 and 14 to be the reality.
They will get better this year. They will get better this year. Not in the next 2 weeks. They still have this December schedule.
Yeah, December's a gauntlet,
which is just ridiculous. The schedule from hell, but it will improve. Once you get through the 31st New Year's Eve, they have the Suns, and then after that, things lighten up considerably. If they could still be 500 at the start of the new year,
that would feel like a gift.
It would feel like a gift. I agree. Yeah, and if they got off to a great start to this run with the win over Milwaukee. If they can finish the month sticking at 500, then I'll feel good about them going down the stretch.
Our thanks to obviously our producer, Evan Valenti, who he is not here to tell you, but we all encourage you, rate, review, subscribe to this show on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you find us. Obviously, check us out. We appreciate it. And of course, Sean Deveney, thank you as always for joining us, my friend. Have a great holiday season. We'll catch you in the new year.
All right. Thank you, Adam.
I'm Adam Kaufman. Join us again next week. Happy holidays, everybody.